to be beautiful, yet to be unbeknownst to the truth of your beauty. To be beautiful, yet not to yield yourself with the esteem or confidence of such beauty. During my freshman year of high school, most of my classes were accelerated courses. Other than passing through the hallways or gathering for an assembly, it was a rarity that I would be in close proximity to other freshmen, as most of my classmates were sophomores, some even juniors. Being forthcoming, it was intimidating. I was a foreigner among familiar faces, and as a result, I became quite aloft. It was evident in the way I acknowledged my peers and appealed to authority that I was a freshman. Yet, as I would become more acquainted with the upperclassmen, I soon acquired an admirer, one whom I too secretly admired. Yet, although I was flattered by his advances, I too was skeptical. I questioned, why me? Why now? Up until this point, I never had a suitor so eligible. He was assertive, he was attractive, he was persistent, he knew what he wanted, and I thought I did too. Yet I didn't. I didn't know how to nurture the seeds of his attraction. Although my esteem was firm, my confidence was wavering. I knew I was worthy. I knew I was deserving. I knew I was enough. Yet I still questioned, why me? Why now? Conclusively, I share this experience because, dare I say, the relationship between the suitor and I never surpassed attraction. He grew tired, and I grew remorseful. I was the ugly duckling. I was typically overlooked and or infrequently sought after. Although comfortable within my skin and assured of my worth, I knew I wasn't a commodifiable or conventional beauty. I was more or less editorial. Especially for that era, my appeal was a bit unorthodox. So as I questioned not only his admiration, I too questioned myself. This exchange challenged my belief systems. I could say I was confident and I could say that I was beautiful, yet when tested, would the weight of my words hold merit? Preceding this failed romance, I then was pursued once more, yet by another romantic interest. Unlike the initial suitor, although persistent and assured of what he wanted, this young man was quite aggressive in his approach. He was a junior, and I a freshman. When introduced, it was out of the confines of school. It was the first week at my first job, and remembering this day vividly, I was wearing a hunter green knitted sweater, some dark wash denim, and maybe some all black Vans. I was very modest in appearance and demeanor. And yet, throughout my shift, this young man was pursuing me as if I were dressed scandalously clad, with my hair done, nails done, everything did. And that was certainly not the case. He didn't know I was a freshman, nor was he aware that we attended school together until informed. All he knew was that I was new. Again, he was persistent, very persistent, almost too persistent in his advances. This was my first time meeting him, and although this unwarranted attention was flattering, it too was overwhelming. As an ugly duckling, I was rarely sought after or acknowledged for my beauty, especially by that of the opposite sex. It was always, Lamaya is intelligent, contemplative, hardworking, creative, or even a wonderful friend, yet it was infrequent that I would be acknowledged for my phenotypical attributions. Conclusively, this initial exchange would be our last exchange, as we were never scheduled together, and he ended up quitting his job after the holidays. Personally, I find that the ugly duckling may yield an innocence that may infringe upon the becoming nature of one's womanhood, making it difficult for said individual to navigate intimate spaces of sexuality and or femininity, making it difficult, for said individual to identify sex appeal within themselves, and on occasion this innocence may depict said individual as a girl within a woman's body rather than a woman within a woman's body. For a lot of ugly ducklings, we are considerable late bloomers. We may have been overlooked or undervalued, and then one day, in days following, we are seen and sought after. Such abrupt attention can encourage hypo and or hypersexual responses when in the regards to romance and or intimate exchanges, at which said individual may repress their sexual appeal or become more promiscuous upon the overwhelming of flattery, and if not of affirmed esteem and secured confidence, things could have took a turn on my behalf as it pertains to my experience as an ugly duckling or dealing with this ugly duckling syndrome. You know, when I talked about the young man who was more aggressive than the previous, this could have resulted in me pursuing hyposexual expressions. It could have made me repress my sexuality, excuse me, because in that moment I was as modest as I could be, and this young man was pursuing me as if, again, I was scandalously clad. So I could have reverted to hyposexuality, where I'm like, okay, let me cover up even more. Dealing with the initial suitor that pursued me assertively, because I received that attention from somebody that I was seeking that attention from but wasn't expecting to receive it, I could have produced more of a hypersexual expression to get his attention again. To sustain the attention that I once received, I could have became a bit more promiscuous. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to produce this commentary because it comes full circle to the dialogue that we have of attention seekers, especially as it pertains to women. You know, I've been hearing this phrase being thrown around frequently as it pertains to this one prominent influence as it relates to pop culture. And a lot of people are referring to this influence as being an attention seeker. But when I look at this influence, I see, you know, an ugly duckling that has identified that they truly were always a swan. So, conclusively, I really just wanted to produce this commentary of the ugly duckling syndrome as a mere forewarning for the ugly ducklings that are now identifying themselves as the swans that they have always been. For me personally, subjectively speaking, no one is truly ugly or pretty. It's really to the eye of the beholder and whom beholds such beauty. You know what I mean? Everyone yields a different beauty. You may not be commercial or conventional, but you're editorial. You are unconventional, but you're still beautiful nonetheless. You're still a swan, even the ugly duckling. I want to say the ugly duckling was still a duck like the rest of the other ducks. It just looked differently. So, you know, you're now identifying yourself as being just as beautiful as you've always been. You've just established a different self esteem, a different level of confidence, and even moreover, as it relates physically, maybe you lost some weight, maybe you gained some weight, and the world is perceiving you differently because you are presenting yourself in a different format. So basically, I just wanted to produce this commentary to just again forewarn the ugly ducklings because you're venturing a new endeavor and you're receiving attention that you may have not received before. And this in turn can incite sensations that are almost euphoric. Just like any addict or any addiction, attention can be an addictive substance or an addictive feeling, an addictive sensation. And if you get carried away with it can take you to some places that you don't want to go, and it can turn you into a person that you were never meant to be. So, for any of my young women and even my young men, you know, just don't get overwhelmed with the flattery. Because I know for me initially, when I started to transition in my life, it was overwhelming, very overwhelming.